Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Bright Teach Study Survival podcast, where we teach you all of the study tips, tricks, and study hacks that stick.
That's right.
And also some career advice today, because we're aware it's the summer holidays. Maybe some of you are starting to look at jobs, think about writing a CV, a little part-time kind of situation going on for a little bit of extra pocket money over the summer.
We've got some warnings for you.
We do.
You're going to need to hear this because you've got to be able to avoid the mistakes that we made.
And we made
in
some.
our first jobs, part-time situations.
Yeah.
It's all going to come up today.
100%. And we've also got on our laptops, in case you're wondering why these magical screens have suddenly appeared, a couple of stories from other people that have also been sent in or that we found on the internet. So we're going to be trying to guess which stories the other person has actually experienced or whether they're from Reddit or whatever been sent in.
Is
That's
it
scary.
real? Is it fake? Or is it Reddit?
Yeah, that's the game. But how are you, Will? How was your weekend?
Doing very well. I'm very excited about this.
I'm really excited. I think this is going to be really entertaining.
How are you doing? You good?
Not too bad, thank you. It's a bit cooler in the UK today, so I can actually function like a normal human being.
Brains are back. Working.
Brains are back,
Brains are back.
which is always a positive thing. It's nice to have some brain cells today.
Okay. Is this story my real story or has it been sent in?
Okay, I'm ready.
You're right. Okay,
Hit me.
Great. So, I once worked at a fast food place. I was told to mop the back kitchen area. I grabbed the mop bucket and I began filling it with water. Only I didn't know that the cleaning solution was nearby and identical to the container that I was using.
Right.
Okay, so it was right next to the fruit punch syrup. So I brought the red container with the cleaner concentrate, mopped the floor with what turned out to be undiluted fruit punch syrup. The floor got stickier with every pass. Managers were slipping, workers were confused, and soon people were tiptoeing like cartoon characters on a candy trap. When the shift lead finally realized what happened, they burst out laughing and then spent another hour helping clean it up. I had to remop the whole place 3 times. And it smells like a Kool-Aid commercial had exploded.
Please. Okay, I don't think that's your story. I think that's been sent in.
You're right.
Yes.
Good job.
God, that would be a nightmare. That's like, I don't know if anybody would have gone clubbing because I think they're probably too young. But when you go clubbing and your shoes stick to the floor and it feels like there's chewing gum times 10 on the bottom of your shoe, I hate that feeling. It's the worst.
What can we learn from this story, Blair? Communication is key.
Yeah.
You got to
Ask
know
questions.
exactly. Yeah, ask lots and lots of questions. I think like when people come into a job for the first time, they're really scared to ask lots of questions.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to bother who they're managing.
Yeah.
But it's so good to ask questions. Ask loads and loads of questions.
Yeah.
Because then you've got a clearer idea of what to do and you'll do a better job. And
100%.
everyone will be happier.
And I think often managers or supervisors really like when you ask questions as well,
Yeah.
because it shows that you're trying to learn. And to be honest, you'll probably learn quicker than somebody who isn't asking the questions.
Definitely.
But also if it prevents you making a mistake, like whoever sent that story in, if it prevents you making a mistake, they would prefer you ask 10 questions and slightly become a little bit annoying with how many questions you're asking versus you lose an hour and a half, 2 hours of your time mopping the floor 3 times.
Exactly.
So it saves time for everyone. And yeah, asking questions at work, especially when you're new, is a really beneficial thing to do.
Excellent.
Cool. Right, I'm gonna tell you a story next. So you can guess, is this story my story or has this been sent in by some of our listeners?
Okay.
So my very first shift at work, I was working at a Laser Quest and I had been there for about, I don't know, an hour. A member of the public comes up to me and goes, "Hi, would you be able to send someone just to go and check on the toilets? They're a bit dirty." Right? This is above my pay grade to start. This is so above my pay grade, but everybody else is busy at this point of time. And I can see my manager having conversations and I just think, do you know what? I'll just go and assess the situation and then come and let somebody else know.
Yeah.
So I creak open the door of the bathroom, right? The ladies' bathroom. Open the door, go in, look in all the toilet cubicles. There's literally no problem. I don't know what the mess is. And then I turn around to look where the mirrors are. And I kid you not, someone has done a dump in the sink. Not near the toilet, not in the toilet, not on the floor by the toilet. Somebody has pulled their trousers down, jumped and sat their butt on the sink and took a big dump in the toilet sink. Do you think that's my story or one that was sent in?
Oh, Blair, I'm so sorry that was your story. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Never in my life, nothing, not in my whole 22 years of living, nothing could have prepared me for that moment. Opening the door, and it was a false sense of security where I was looking around, I was like, oh, there's nothing wrong. It was the biggest turd I have ever seen in my life.
Did you have to clear it up?
No, I was
well
like,
done.
I'm not being funny, it's my first day.
Yeah.
Let a girl catch her breath.
Why is it always like a laser quest? Or like, I used to work at a skate park, and people would write stuff on the walls in poop. Yeah, in the toilets. They were, I refused to clean
It just
that up.
makes no sense.
I'm not
it
cleaning
makes literally no sense. So the important thing about these kind of experiences and the learning, because if you can't take a learning from it, what was the point of that experience? Except for trauma.
Don't work at a laser quest.
Don't work at a laser quest. But no, the main learning we can probably take is understand what your responsibilities are in a job. Because I easily could have turned around and been told, go and clear the poo in the sink up. But that isn't on my job responsibilities.
No.
So by clearly defining what's expected of you in your new job, your summer job, whatever, is so important. Because then you know exactly what your roles and responsibilities are. And if somebody turned around to me and said, you can deal with the poo in the sink, I would have been like, am I getting a bonus? Like this, I don't get paid to do this.
What I've learned is don't poop in a sink.
Yeah. If any of you poo in a sink, I have a problem with you. I have a problem with you.
All right. Would
Right,
you like
your
to hear it?
turn.
Okay, great. Is this my true story, or is this a story that someone sent in?
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
I was 19.
Right.
Desperate for work. COVID had shut everything down.
Yeah.
No one was hiring. So when I got offered a construction gig in a gaugy part of town, I said yes without asking questions.
Okay.
So I turned up in not normal clothes, but some pretty
Pretty
dirty
chill.
clothes. And they handed me like a bunch of kit from a bin liner. No changing
Cute.
rooms. So on a street corner, there I was, trousers at my ankles in broad daylight, trying to stuff myself into stiff work gear while pigeons watched me like a judgmental neighbor.
Yeah.
Okay. They then dumped me at a building site with a guy I'd never seen before. No intro, no instructions, just follow him.
Okay.
Right? And I'm like, this guy? He was built like a Marvel villain.
Okay.
Moving bricks, ripping up fencing.
Yeah.
Like it was paper,
Yeah.
right? So I couldn't be the lazy new kid. So I matched
Yeah.
him skip for skip. Right? Filled up 3 skips later. My lungs were begging for mercy.
Yeah.
Like all the muscles in my wrists and arms were dying.
My God.
At one point, I had to pee behind a skip,
Cute.
praying that no one saw. Around 2 p.m., drenched in sweat and dust, I turned and saw him casually peel off his jumper to reveal a torso that looked like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, carved out of oak. Meanwhile, I could barely lift a shovel. By the end of the day, I was hallucinating garden gnomes. I thought I was going to die. That was my first day, and somehow they still expected me to show up the next morning.
My God.
Is that a real story?
Is that your story?
Is it my story?
Or has that been sent in?
Yeah.
See, I don't know. I could see that happening to you. I'm going to say it's your story.
It is.
Yes. No way.
true
Oh
story.
my God.
Yeah. It
That was a shocker.
Like I got to 2 p.m. in the afternoon. I thought I was going to die.
Yeah, I don't
Like
blame
I was
you.
trying. He was working way. Like I didn't realize this at the time, but he'd been given that site for the first time, and so he was like, I'm just gonna like
Just going to crack on.
I'm just gonna crack on. I'm just gonna do everything, and he worked like a maniac.
My God.
Like later on in that like construction business, me and other people used to joke about how he worked like a insane man.
A crazy person.
Crazy person. And first day I was like, oh, this is the expectation. I've got to work as hard as him. So I tried to. And yeah, 2:00 in the afternoon, I genuinely thought I was going to die. That was that. Like,
I don't blame you.
knackered.
I think there is something to be said for asking, like, or having some kind of expectation before you go. I mean, turning up with somebody you've never met before, you know, you get told as a kid, don't go with strangers. But when you go into the office, someone's like, follow me. And you're just like, okay. It's like Pied Piper comes out and I'm like, hello. But there is definitely something to be said for asking what's kind of expected of you, especially with the uniform situation, like getting those clear expectations set so you kind of know what you're getting yourself into is always a positive thing. Even for example, did you have to take your own lunch? Did you know you had to take your own lunch? You know, these are the kind of questions you should be asking or thinking of so that you can go to your first day at your job and just be as prepared as possible. Although your first day, I think, is never 100% smooth sailing. There's always something that happens.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to be hallucinating garden gnomes or somebody pooing in the sink of your workplace, but you know, something always goes on, and it just understanding as much as possible can give you more of a full picture.
That's right. And you're always going to want to do your best, but don't expect that you can first day roll up and do it as well as everyone else.
Yeah, because they've already been doing it for a period of time.
Ages, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. All right.
Right, my turn. Okay. I copied a mate's CV because I didn't know what to write. They had experience in retail, so I left it all in. Managed to land myself an interview for a supermarket job. They started asking me questions about how I'd handled customer complaints and stock rotation. But obviously I completely froze because I'd never even done a paper round, no kind of online jobs, not even the survey apps that you can do for money. So when I froze and didn't have an answer for the interviewer, they turned around and said, you might want to rewrite this before you apply for jobs again so that it actually reflects your experience. So they knew that I hadn't prepared at all. Do you think that's my story, or do you think that's been sent in?
I think it's been sent in.
That has been sent in.
What can we learn from that? That's pretty...
Don't lie on your
Don't
CV.
lie on your CV. Yeah.
Don't lie on your CV.
Oh, that's really embarrassing.
That's
called out for
I
it.
would be so humbled. To be fair, lying on your CV, not really sure what you're expecting going to an interview, but actually I know quite a few of my friends who have not necessarily lied and said they had experience in something they didn't, but quite a few people I know exaggerate on their CV in terms of what they've said they've done before or whatever. Because typically if you are looking for a role, it may say on the job description, this is probably quite helpful, on a job description when you look, it will say what's kind of expected for you in the job. So if you are writing a CV, you can literally look at the things they're asking for and tailor your CV slightly to the job to say, okay, here's the experience I have that reflects these points that you're looking for. And if you use some of the similar key terms or buzzwords, it will flag it in the whoever's reading your CV's head. But in this situation with this story, it's really important you don't lie. Because if you get asked questions, and the same applies for applying to uni and all sorts, generally don't lie or exaggerate heavily on a piece of paper where you're going to be asked questions about it at a later date. It's really important not to. And you can tailor your experience slightly differently. It's like my brother at the moment is going for a secretary job at the gym that he goes to for a bit of money over summer. And I was speaking to him about, because it was talking about how you've dealt with customers before and showed them around and kind of given them a tour and highlighted facilities, whatever. And at first he was like, I haven't got any experience in that field. And I turned around and said, well, you've done school open days. So you weren't directly selling to them, I guess, but you were able to tour them around and say, here's the facilities and this is really cool. And here's something else I like. So think wider about how your experience so far can tie into the stuff. It may not seem as streamlined or as easy thinking, but if you typically take a step back, you should be able to have a good guess.
Yeah, there's lots of transferable skills that you can use to say, look, I've kind of got experience in this, same skills.
But for your first job, nobody's going to be, well, some companies do, but as a whole, most people aren't going to be expecting you to turn up with 30 years experience. You know?
I hope not.
I would not have got my job at Lace Quest. But there we go.
Excellent.
Right, your turn.
Is this a true story that I experienced, or did someone send this in?
Okay.
I needed money during college, desperately. A mate said the new fish and chip shop was hiring. I walked in, said I had 0 experience, and walked out with a job. No contract, no uniform, just cash in hand at the end of the week and a slap on the back. Day 1, they threw me on the burgers. I never cooked anything in my life.
Oh my God.
Unless you count tragic food tech disasters. So now I was standing in a hairnet, squinting at raw patties like they might explode, flipping them with the grace of a toddler in oven mitts. Soon, the actual managers quit.
Oh.
And suddenly, it was us kids running the show. Orders stacked up, people were shouting, the phones were ringing off the hook. So I panicked and did what any underpaid 19-year-old would do. I gave everyone free fish and chips made myself some nuggets and a burger, and went to chill out back. And I told the new managers that I got paid more than I actually did. The new managers were illegally living above the shop, or so was the suspicion.
Shut up.
They had the smoke alarms covered up with plastic bags so they could chain smoke indoors. The place stank of grease and regret. Worst of all, when I went to get people's large cods, they told me that every fish was a large cod.
Brilliant.
And when I went to get the haddocks, which we charged way more for, they told me that every fish was a large haddock. I was a burger boy in the middle of a great cod conspiracy.
Oh, there is so much to unpick here. There is so much to unpick here. Okay. Oh, there's so much going on. Health and safety.
Is it real, or did someone send that in, or is it just made up?
I'm hoping to the love of God that's made up, but I think someone might have sent that in.
It's my story.
It's your story? Please, Will. Oh my God.
It's my true story. Yeah. Any
Do you know,
questions?
it's really rare that as someone with ADHD, I'm speechless. Okay.
Where do you want to start?
Oh my God. So the fire alarm situation with
Yes.
the smoking inside,
Yeah.
outrageous. To be fair, I've also experienced that before. I used to work at a little Italian restaurant, probably only could fit 15 tables inside. It was very small. But the chef just used to chain smoke in the back room. And
Yes.
I spoke to the manager about it and was like, I'm 99% sure we're not allowed to smoke around food inside
Yeah.
when there's no ventilation, whatever. And he was like, oh, the chef does what he likes. I was like, okay, but health and safety says no.
Yeah, we had like an upstairs bit where we could get changed, and there was a bathroom, and that's where they would chain smoke, and they had the
Go
smoke alarms covered up
outside.
with plastic bags, and that's where like some of the food prep was done as well.
It's awful.
So
It's
like
really
I go upstairs and
bad.
there'd be like bread that we'd serve later next to cigarette butts.
Cute. Health
Yeah.
and safety. Check the health and safety stuff at your work.
That's right.
It's really
Don't
important,
work
to
anywhere
be honest.
dodgy. If
Yeah.
it's dodgy, get out of there.
Yeah.
And if you're treated badly, that's not normal. Like they should be nice to you, your managers,
yeah.
because these managers were not nice to me.
No. That is a crazy story.
Next question.
A lot of places let you make food on shift for yourself
Mm.
if there's food there.
Yeah. So
Feeding the entire restaurant for free, though, I mean, that was a choice.
Right. So the managers quit, and they left. Like they got in arguments with the people who were going to take over the restaurant. So they cut the phone lines and literally like just walked out of there. So these new managers just didn't know how to run a store. So we didn't have any change in the till to give back to people. And this was when just most people still paid in cash.
Cash, yeah.
I was just giving things out.
Fair. I mean,
It had no
I mean, if
bearing
it-
on me. And
yeah.
I told the new managers I got paid more than I did.
that's not half
And yeah,
bad.
there were like hundreds of people waiting. I cooked myself some nuggets, cooked myself a burger, grabbed a drink out of the fridge, and sat out
just
back.
went off.
Yeah. I
Just
quit.
went
I
off.
quit a couple weeks after that.
Yeah, I don't blame you. To be honest, it sounds like an absolute
It was a bit of a mess.
circus,
All right.
for lack of better wording.
I'd love to hear another one of your stories.
Okay. Right. Is this a true story of mine or has this been sent in? So I used to work at a restaurant and the chef and I never saw eye to eye. And there was a whole discrepancy with what was going on with the tips in this restaurant. So what it said on all of our contracts were you just take the tips that you get left. Like it's, it's quite common in a lot of restaurants.
Yeah.
You just pocket what's left on the table for you because it's yours.
That's how typically should work.
But then what ended up happening when I was working there is the manager was taking all the tips and then splitting them equally between us. I don't think I got more than 20 quid a week in tips, and I was definitely getting like £40 tip in a night.
Yes.
So the tips definitely weren't reflective. And so me and the chef didn't see eye to eye, but we came up with this strategy of I was just going to pocket my tips and I'd give him a little bit of a backhand. But then when the manager saw that I was pocketing my tips, as it said in my contract, I wasn't being sneaky. When he saw I was pocketing my tips, he started making me give them over to him.
Yeah.
And then the chef turned around and was like, where's my tips? You said you were pocketing the tips. We had this whole agreement. And he ended up doing this thing, which in like a lot of Italian Mediterranean culture, if you do this at someone, it means like, I've got an eye on you, like watch out, whatever. So after this conversation, he went, it's a threat, right?
Yeah.
So he did this and I handed in my notice same day and I then said I was sick, so I never had to go in again.
Wow.
Do you think that's true, or do you think that's been as in my story, or do you think that's been written in?
I think that's your story.
That is my story.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all good.
There are a lot of bad managers out there.
There is. There's quite a few of them. And I think it's really important when you are up for a job or whatever to, if you can, have a chat to some of the other employees.
That's a good idea.
You have to take it with a slight pinch of salt because obviously they're not going to chat badly against their manager in case you do work there. But having a rough guide of kind of what the vibe is in the place of work is really important, because having like a manager who's going to pocket all the tips, and then he clearly was taking about half, to be honest, we all decided, and a chef who's like threatening me because I'm not giving him a share of the tips, which contractually I'm not even obligated to give him anyway.
Wow.
It's important to check. And if you do feel uncomfortable in your workplace, there are certain things you can do. Some workplaces will have a HR department, which you can go and speak to. Not all of them do, especially if you're in like a small restaurant or whatever. But in that situation, speak to a parent or somebody and get their advice, because obviously certain situations are slightly different. But don't stay somewhere where people aren't nice to you. Maybe there's some workplace bullying going on, or you genuinely just don't fit with the vibe. Like I've worked in places before where I highlighted to one of the members of staff that there was mold on the cheese in the sandwiches we were giving out to people. And he was like, oh, just cut that bit off. I was like, no, I actually don't think you understand. Like, this is not okay. And we had a 4 out of 5 rating on the hygiene. You know, the green thing in the window, the hygiene rating score thing? We had a 4 out of 5. We were giving out moldy cheese.
Tasty.
I personally didn't, because I was like, I wouldn't want someone to give me moldy cheese. I just threw the whole block in the bin. But on the days I wasn't there, you know, it's...
That is really bad, but I'm sure when I was 16, I served people raw burgers. So that's probably way worse.
So the moral of this entire episode is do not eat out in restaurants where there are people under 20 serving the food.
Don't let managers treat you badly. And that's difficult to do when you're 16, 17.
Yeah.
You haven't like got as much, well, I certainly didn't have as much reassurance in myself.
No, neither.
So yeah, talk to a responsible adult.
But just because you're potentially on minimum wage doesn't mean you should be accepting minimum like job comfort.
Yeah.
Like you don't want somewhere where the people are nasty to you, where you're being asked to work extra time and not getting paid for it, whatever. That's something else. If you're somebody who has a first job and you have to clock in or clock out, identify what the like checkpoints are for getting paid. So for example, I've worked in jobs where it's on the hour, or I've worked on jobs where it's on the 15 minutes. And be aware of that when you're working. Because for example, if you finish at 3:00 and you only get paid for the hour and they ask you to stay until 3:45, and then you clock out before 4, that's 45 minutes of unpaid time, because the jobs that I did when I was younger always kind of seemed to have that kind of issue reoccurring. But other jobs I worked at, it was every 15 minutes. So just make sure you're aware of the timings that you get paid for, like the timing chunks. I don't know how you would describe that, but hopefully that made sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is this a true story about me?
Okay.
Or did someone send this in?
Go on.
A new office hire accidentally replied all to a company-wide onboarding welcome thread. They thought they were messaging HR privately to ask if they could bring an extra pair of socks and underwear to keep in their desk for emergencies.
Understood.
I wrote, is it okay to keep a spare pair of underwear in my bottom drawer, just in case I get sweaty or something? And hit reply all. It went to 400 plus employees, including the director.
Oh my God. I think I'd have to quit on the spot. I'm really hoping this isn't your story.
It's not my story. It's
okay, good. Okay.
It's all good.
So it's been sent in.
Yeah.
Fine. God.
It's difficult.
Poor person.
I don't know how email works. Does any Gen Z person know how email works?
Thing is, I know how email works. I just don't know how people accidentally hit reply all. It's 2 separate buttons. One says reply and one says reply all. It's literally one under the other. So maybe if you're doing a rush job. Moral of this story is make sure you check your emails. Also, maybe have that conversation in person if there's any risk of you sending a company-wide email about your underwear.
Yeah.
The CEO does not want to know that you get a sweaty butt crack. Like they actually just don't want to know that. And also you have to think about, you know, people are hopefully nice following that situation, but people will think about it, especially if you're new, they'll think about it for at least a little while. And you don't want to have something like that you can't live down. So check whether you're sending reply or reply all. And maybe be mindful about what you put in emails, full stop.
First impressions are important.
Yeah, mind you, that was the entire company's first impression of that person. Please, can I bring in spare underwear because I get a sweaty butt crack?
There you go. So hopefully you've learned a lot from this episode. Just slightly unhinged.
But I think that is all from us for today. We will be back same time next week. Don't miss out. Put your post notifications on so you don't miss our gorgeous faces or our gorgeous voices if you're listening to Spotify. And we will see you same time next week. Bye. You never wave. I look crazy every single.